Cantos have a fundamental intertextual relationship with their hypotext. Pullman notes that they rely on their audience to be intimately familiar with the source text to enrich the reader experience. The more canonical the original author, the better. Thus Virgil, often considered the most canonical Latin author, was frequently employed in the formation of Latin cantos, both secular and theological. Proba, with the understanding that Virgil prophesied a Christian message, uses his text in the formation of a Christian canto. Looking at the tradition of Virginian Christian cantos, we'll explore how and why Proba uses Virgil's text to narrate a Christian message. Virginian cantos reached their peak in the 4th century, with Proba being the most famous. While much of Virginian cantos tended towards parody, as Pullman discusses, Proba is the first writer to compose a substantial Christian canto, the first to use Virgil within a Christian context, and the first Christian writer that we know of that was a woman. Proba has both been celebrated and scorned for her literary choices, for her use of Virgil, the use of the canto form, and her adaptation and transformation of the Gospel. Before Proba, Christians often associated cantos with heretics, and, as Pullman says, condemned them as intentionally conveying dogmatic lies in a manipulative way. In fact, Jerome, in 395 AD, in a letter to Paulinus of Nola, condemned writers of cantos within a Christian context for distorting the meaning of Scripture, calling it childish, and, similar to the trickery of charlatans, Jerome wholeheartedly disapproved of Proba's work, with many subsequent scholars arguing that Jerome specifically calls her out. While this is up for debate, there is clearly a precedent for using Virgil within a Christian context if Jerome feels the need to comment on it. For Proba, Virgil is the obvious choice for a number of reasons. The first being that he had already foretold the coming of Christ within Eclogues 4, when he spoke of a virgin, a child, and the return of Saturn's kingdom. For Christians of the 4th century, the virgin is Mary, the child Jesus, and the return is that of the heavenly kingdom after the fall. This passage, not unique to Proba, as it is found in 2 other Christian cantos, forms the basis of Proba's understanding of Virgil as a prophet and a proto-Christian figure. As line 23 states, I will declare that Virgil sang about the pious feats of Christ. Thus for Proba, even if not for Jerome, this connection between Virgil and Christianity was clear. Plant notes that this liminal status of Virgil as both pagan and Christian grounds Proba's canto into a traditional Roman literary model that could be used by elite Christians to teach the children the classics. This was necessary as Emperor Julian in 362 AD sent out a decree which restricted Christians from teaching pagan texts to students. By transforming Virgil into a Christian text, the canonical text could still be used to form the basis of elite education, even after conversion. Becoming Christian did not mean forsaking your Roman lineage. If we take the earlier Proba to be the writer of the canto, then scholars such as Plant theorize that the canto is a response to the Julian imperial restriction. By transforming Virgil's writing into an account of the gospel during a time when new aristocratic converts were still trying to figure out their relationship between their new faith and their classical education, as Kozinski puts it, Proba, having been in the same situation, was able to call back to a familiar Roman past while recontextualizing it with the present change. Proba constantly uses references to Roman culture and history that allows her audience to form a greater understanding of Christ's story. She uses talk of clients during her Sermon on the Mount, she relates imagery of the Golden Age when describing the Garden of Eden, and she changes the order of creation to fit a Roman tradition found in both Virgil and Ovid. As Carroll states, the principle of unification, not fragmentation, guides Proba's engagement with Virgil in the Bible, to show that they are naturally related. Proba's canto was even found together in manuscripts with Virgil, revealing an intimate connection between the two in terms of reception and education. Though Proba was able to reveal a Christian message within Virgil's canonical pagan texts, there are some difficulties in this process on a micro level. As Kaczynski points out, there is a fundamental dissonance between the epic diction of Virgil and the humble sermons of the early fathers, between Roman heroes and Christian characters as presented in the Gospel. This is obvious in the Old Testament portion of the Canto. In the New Testament section, when Proba has Jesus speak the Sermon on the Mount, this epic diction of Virgil comes through. The gentle teaching of Christ often stands in contrast to the leadership styles of Rome. Sane suggests that Jesus becomes a powerful legislator, with justice and wealth emphasized, and with clients and families as the most important relationships. Sane also notes that practicality, not radicality, is the upper hand here, a firm departure from the Gospels. The same shift can be seen in Jesus' crucifixion, where he displays anger at his captors. The specific scene is absent from the Gospels altogether. Additionally, things as simple as names have been left out of the Canto, with Jesus, God, and possibly Moses being the only named actors in the piece. Principal characters aren't always clear, and it can make the narrative flow turbulent and inconsistent. Not only are the names of Adam and Eve, Mary and Joseph, Noah, or John the Baptist absent, Christ's name only appears in the proem, where Proba adds it in, having found no equivalent line in Virgil. As Sandnes points out, it is only after line 56 that all the lines are genuine, and that the proem shows that some introductory comments were needed, as the Virginian text was not able to adequately express Proba's overall intentions. On the micro level, there are some teething issues as discussed when adapting from Virgil, which has led some scholars to disregard the entire genre of cantos. As we can see, some 20th century scholars compared cantos like Proba's to chains of genuine gold that are poorly fastened to each other. However, while the problems of grammar may cause issues when using lines from other works, these lines do in fact lead to additional intertextual meanings that should be explored. On a macro level, Proba's and Virgil's narratives speak of very similar journeys. Immensely oversimplified, Virgil's Aeneid chronicles the trials of founding the Roman people by a semi-divine figure of Aeneas, a pious leader who is destined to bring peace. Jesus has much the same goal, to bring God's chosen people to peace in heaven. This imagery has been co-opted by Proba in her portrayal of Jesus, and, as Cato observes, Proba's Christ is represented as a Roman hero. Clark additionally notes that Jesus is closer to an epic hero than a suffering servant, as we can see in the Gospels themselves. This Jesus-Aeneas topography is disrupted by interlinks not just to Aeneas, but to Camilla, Iris, Hercules, and a number of other figures in Virgil's work. Each interlink, that Proba's elite audience would be aware of, adds new depth and meaning to the Gospel narrative. Jesus not only inherits the legacy of Aeneas, but is related to a greater narrative of Roman mythology. It is not just the Aeneid, however. Proba uses Eclogues 4, one of Virgil's pastoral poems. As it has already been noted, it speaks of a prophecy of the return of the Golden Age through a child. By using lines from this text when describing Jesus being cradled by Mary after fleeing from Herod, lines 377 to 379, Proba emphasizes that Jesus is in fact this child, and it is only the start of his journey. Even though Proba is confined to the words of Virgil, as Krivakis writes, the selection of particular items, however, events, descriptions, or mere references, which Proba developed and were purchased from Genesis, constitutes an entirely personal choice, and consequently reflects her attitude towards them. These choices of intertextual references, then, reveal Proba's intentional characterization and intentional emphasis on certain themes and events. Not all of Christ's ministry is related by Proba. Sandnes notes that Proba leaves out all stories of parables and stories of Jesus' healing. Instead, he is related more to warriors and leaders. When Mary breastfeeds Jesus, a scene not found anywhere in the Gospel, Proba pulls lines from Book 11 concerning the warrior Camilla. Camilla is forced to flee her home as a baby and ends up sacrificing herself in battle. Thus, even here as a baby, Proba foreshadows Jesus' crucifixion. Sanders reminds us that it is important to remember that not all links add additional theological meaning to the narrative. While it's not always seamless, the intertextual links between the narrative Proba creates and the original Virginian lines does in fact add a deeper layer of meaning to her canto. Proba is not only showing that Virgil predicted Christ, but that Christianity is the logical extension of the founding of Rome. As Catherine Toll suggests in her analysis of the Aeneid and the creation of Roman identity, the choice of Aeneas over Romulus was a way to develop a shared Roman identity that wasn't restricted to those who lived in Rome, but to the entirety of Italy. Thus, by using the legacy of Aeneas and Virgil, Proba creates a new Roman identity as Christians. Virgil is the prophet. His Christian message merely needed to be revealed and understood. Proba, as the composer, simply demonstrated what was already there in the hypertext.